Outward is an open world survival RPG that doesn't hold your hand but lets you create your own world and path of your choosing. Outward was made by the developers 9 Dot Studios, with 10 people designing and working on the game, and that within itself impresses me immensely. So, in the world of Outward, you start off as a nobody, but then you grind your way to becoming stronger and choosing your own path. And because of that, everything you find, craft, and kill along the way gives you a sense of accomplishment. With that, you have a multitude of weapons, weapon types, and skills and armor that you can choose from. So melding your character that you want to become has never been more satisfying. And there's a playstyle for pretty much everyone, so whether you want to become the tank with a sword and shield, rushing in the front lines and overwhelming your enemies, to a subtle rogue sneaking up on your enemy, or a cowardly mage that sits back and casts spells, then look no further, this game is for you. I do want to note that I have 100 plus hours of game time, and 100% of that is solo. So if you wanted to experience the journey on your own, or have a friend tag along, both experiences are possible. And I will do my best to not spoil anything, as well as a review. I also will be going some of the aspects of the game in detail. So this can be looked at as sort of a informative / review video. So besides that, let's go ahead and get into it. So the first thing that we will look at is the combat. It can be very enjoyable yet challenging. There is a targeting system that locks onto the enemies that you are fighting if you are in range, and you can swap between the targets if there are multiple enemies. But with the targeting system, it can throw you off at some moments as you are fighting multiple targets at once. If you move your mouse or analog pointed towards a non-targeted enemy, there is a chance that it can cause you to swap targets, completely missing the target that you actually want to hit. However, combat is still possible without the system. You just have to be a little bit more knowledgeable of the enemies and the weapons that you are using. I find this to excite the combat, making it so you have more control of your positioning, so it's not necessarily a bad thing. If you are fighting multiple enemies, which I guarantee at some point you will, try fighting without target system. Unless you are using a ranged build or casting spells, it would probably be best to have the targeting system assist your aim. I enjoyed the swapping between both targeting, assist, and free combat. For me, it kept each battle unique and fun. Overall, the combat can be quite challenging in your first battles, but as you own your skills and master your weapon, you'll be able to find yourself decimating the enemies in no time. Moving on to the weapons, there are a variety of melee weapons you can equip. These include one-handed swords, axes, maces, and then the two-handed weapons that you can equip are polearms, spears, two-handed axes, maces, swords, and staffs. Complementing the one-handed weapons, however, there are also weapons that only are equipable in your offhand slot. So these are chakrams, daggers, pistols, lexicons, lanterns, and shields. And then of course we have bows, which obviously take both of your hands to use. Each of these weapons do come with their own skills and combos as well, so not all weapons are the same. So depending on your play style, you can either go with the high risk, high reward style of the two-handed mace, being able to toss your enemies around the battlefield but taking some hits in the process, or again the agile and cunning style of the rogue, sneaking up on your opponents for devastating backstabs and bleeding your opponent out. So if having a variety of weapons to choose from isn't enough, you can also specialize into multiple classes. So there are currently 8 classes that you can spec into, but you're only able to fully specialize into 3 of those 8. Each class has a skill tree, and each tree has 3 tiers, and your character of course is allowed those 3 breakthrough skill points to progress fully into a tree. The first tier of skills you are able to obtain no matter what other class you commit to. I found this system to be quite enjoyable because it let me test out some other skills of that class tree and specific playstyle without having to fully commit to that class. Then the tier 2 skills are obtained by spending that precious breakthrough point, and these skills are basically a complement to the specific class you're wanting to build. So the Rune Sage breakthrough skill point gives you 40 mana, whereas the Warrior Monk breakthrough skill point gives you 40 stamina. And as you progress through the trees, some of these skills that you learn require a boon to activate. Boons are like auras that will enhance whatever magical property that you want to use. But in this example, for you to use a Chakram skill down the Philosopher class, you have to be buffed with the Discipline boon. And the Discipline boon, can be learned in the Warrior Monk tree. So there's a lot of mixing and matching that you can do in order to make a build. And with some classes, the third tier of skills require you to choose one or the other So if you choose to pick one skill that complements your playstyle, you can't learn the other. So you have to really be careful when picking your skill. Now, to my knowledge, you cannot respec either. So again, please be careful when you're speccing into these trees and spending your precious silver. So with learning all these new abilities and weapon attacks, that brings us to the action bars. You only have 8 slots to choose from, so be sure you put your most important skills in your action bars. And depending on your build, you may not have enough room, so you can still use your skills in your skill window. Now what I tend to do is, if I don't have enough action bars, I just use my important skills like my attacks and things like that on the action bar, and just use my auras, or excuse me, my boons on the skill window. So I can just open up the window, use them before combat, and then don't have to worry about them until the cooldown is up. So again, be careful how you wish to put your skills on the skill bar, and make sure you're putting your most important skills on there. And I think this is cool because it makes you pick and choose what you want to have. You can't just use any skill when you want. So depending on what kind of combat you're about to go into, you can organize your skills in order to have them quickly accessed. Like for example, if you're about to fight a mage, you probably want to set a different kind of skills, maybe range skills, so you can fight them at a distance. Or if you're going to be fighting multiple enemies, you probably want to equip your sword and shield and use your shield skills instead. So I feel like that's pretty cool. It limits your ability to fight, but at the end of the day, I think that's really important to have in the game. And as you're going to see with this review, I focused more into the combat, weapons, and builds, so the customization with all that a little bit more, because for me, that's what I find the most important part of an RPG is. Now that can change between all of you, but for me, I typically go into those a little bit more because that's where I find fun in the game, just going around killing things and having the customization and the ability to use these different skills and change to these different specs. That's what I have fun with the most. So again, that can change for each of you, but with all the options that you have to build your character, it can be a little overwhelming at first, but when you start to understand the system and how it works, and you know what kind of play style you want to choose from, you know, that just makes the game even more fun, having all those options, and makes it more interesting, at least in my opinion. And it makes me want to try all these variations to find some really cool builds. And from what I've seen so far from the community, they have come up with some stuff I've never even thought of. So this makes me want to play the game even more, to try those out. And I must admit, I have multiple characters with different builds and wielding different weapons. As I said, without spoiling too much, I will go over a little bit of the beginning of the story. So again, you start off as a nobody in the world and are immediately tasked to find a way to keep your house or you will lose it, and you are given a time limit to do so. I enjoyed this very much because it immediately engaged me as a player to want to go out there and explore and find ways to get what I need before time is up. If you figure out a way to do so, you will then be told of 3 different factions to choose from: the Blue Chamber Collective, the Holy Mission of Elat, and the Heroic Kingdom of Levant. After you get the quest to choose one of these factions, the game kind of lets you go at your own pace, really giving you the feeling of you're crafting your own world and you can choose your own path. Choosing a faction does not have a time gate, so it allows you to effectively travel and discover each location before committing. Now, there are some instances where time can play a factor for specific quests, but I feel like this makes the world more dynamic and there are actual consequences for your actions. So you'd always want to choose according to the world you want to build. Each faction has a different playthrough, and once you commit to one, you cannot commit to the others. This is also great because since I wanted to play different variations of classes, I knew I was able to not only have a different experience with combat, but also with the story. So starting a character, you will always have a different experience as long as you choose different paths. I found that the story quests really engage you and help you understand the world and what is happening really well. It made me want to rush through all the stories, but between each story quest, the game kind of allows you to take a couple days before starting the next one. This made me happy because I was able to take a break to enjoy the world before I come back into the main story, so I wouldn't finish the game too quickly. Now you can just rest for 3 days and come back in a matter of minutes, but that would take away the fun for me. I was pleasantly happy with the story, and I'm glad there's 3 potential different playthroughs you can go through to try out the different builds. So a lot of gamers see the survival tag to a game and are immediately put off. But what I can assure you about Outward is that the survival aspect of the game isn't as grueling as you might think. Yes, your player can go hungry, thirsty, tired, and get diseases, but what I found with the game is that if you just play, you are given a bunch of food to eat and cook, water to drink, remedies to cure your diseases, and you also can bring along a sleeping bag or tent to sleep in the wild. Now you could also go into the closest city and sleep in the inn, so you have that option as well. Now, sleeping in the wilderness, you have a chance to be ambushed, but I found that if you match the guarding time with the sleep time, that won't be a possibility. Of course, this makes sure that you use up double the time, but if you know there are no time-gated quests currently, you have that option. You could also repair your gear while using your sleeping bag or tent, or using the inn. The other aspects of the survival are having to deal with the weather and various diseases again, but as long as you're equipped with the right clothing, weather won't be a problem, and with diseases, of course, you do have those concoctions that you can make or buy to remedy those. The last bit we will touch on with survivability is the backpack. Now the backpacks play a major role in your journey, not only because it helps you carry more, but also backpacks have some properties to them. Like some backpacks may be its own light source to making your food last longer before rotting. And I didn't mention this in the combat portion, but having a backpack can majorly affect you in battle. So you have the option to drop your backpack, which allows you to roll out of the way faster and doesn't hinder your movements as much in combat. When you do drop your backpack, however, there will be an icon on your compass that shows you the location of where you last dropped your backpack and your most current backpack. So don't be afraid to drop it far away from a battle because you will be able to locate it easily. You also have some carry weight in your pockets, so even if you do drop your backpack, you can stash major items like potions in your pockets so you have those readily available even without your backpack. Now moving on to crafting, there's a good amount of things you can craft, but I won't go into too much detail here. You can purchase recipes for items you may be interested in, whether it be potions, foods, weapons, armors, or weapon enhancements. And there are blacksmiths in each of the cities that can craft you specific gear sets if you provide them with the materials and the silver. Potions and foods also have their own buffs, which can give you boons or enhance your weapons with magical properties, so crafting some of those may be worth it in the long run. Now you can craft items without having recipes. You may lose your materials by attempting to discover new recipes, but you can also always look online to see what makes what, but for you true gamers out there, you do have the option to discover recipes on your own. So last we will talk about the graphics, sound, and overall atmosphere of the game. You can definitely tell at first the graphics are a little bit outdated, however with the lighting and just overall ambiance of some of the areas, you quickly fall in love. When you're traversing the desert, you can really feel the heat on your character and sometimes struggle to find cover or just get into the town. And when it's nighttime, you better have a torch because you won't be able to see a thing. Even with a torch, you can barely see a thing. Now there are voice acting lines in the game, and I think they did a really good job with all the characters. Some of the dialogue is just text followed by random voice lines, but I find some of them to be really funny. But I am glad they added voices in the game, and it really engages you in the world, especially when you're doing the story. And you get to care for these characters a little bit more since they do have a voice behind them. The music is great as well. I found myself sitting in some areas some points and just listening to the music because I loved it so much. But I did find out that sometimes while out in the world, the music can stop for a little bit until I enter a different zone. But other than that, the skill sounds are really great and they really add to the intensity of battle. My favorite sound in the game has to be the chakram attacks. They just feel so satisfying when you swing the weapons. So overall, I've had so much fun playing this game, and I can safely say it's helped me become a better content creator and kick off my channel. So with all that in mind, this game will always have a lasting memory of fun, joy, but also frustration, which is the perfect balance. The combat can be clunky at times, but of course, like with everything, once you practice and master your skills, you become better. And with such a dynamic world, you are able to choose your own path and pick your own faction to join in, and it makes you really feel like the character progression matters. The survival can definitely affect how you play and move throughout each location, but can easily be resolved by just playing the game again and again. With this being developed by a 10-person crew, I am beyond amazed on the amount of accomplishment and I look forward to more of their work and more of their games. And that wraps it up, honestly. This video can go on for way longer, but I just wanted to get some of my points across without letting it go on for too long and just informing those who haven't played the game yet and what they are going to get themselves into. Again, I've had so much fun with this game, more than I've ever expected. So if you do love it as well, let me know what you like about the game. If you disagree on some points, let me know as well. I always love to hear your input and having you engaged, so feel free to let me know in the comments below. And again, thank you so much, and see you in the next video. But I do want to add as well, I am not a master reviewer, so yes, please let me know what I can do better on. And again, thank you so much.